The following story is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. I had just finished up a long day at work. I was walking home because I don't have a car and I live in the city. So walking home alone at night was kind of normal for me. It was late and I was very tired, and I didn't want to spend any more money on an Uber or a Lyft. So I wrapped my coat very tightly around me, pulled up my hood to shield my face from the rain, and I continued to walk towards my apartment. As I was walking, the streetlights above me flickered. They made very strange shaped shadows on the sidewalk. I've actually never noticed this any other time that I've walked home from work. As I began to walk, I began to get that strange feeling of me being watched by someone. I tried to shake it off, but seconds passed and this feeling just kept growing stronger. I quickly turned my neck to see that there was nobody behind me, just an empty street. So I took a deep breath and I kept walking. I was ignoring this knot in my stomach and this feeling of somebody watching me. Suddenly, I hear footsteps behind me and I turn around. At first I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but the sounds just grew louder with each passing moment. No one was behind me, so I just quickened my pace. But the footsteps grew faster and louder and more aggressive. I quickly turned around again. But this time, I saw a figure in the distance. It appeared to be a woman. She was dressed in all black with a giant hood covering her face. She was walking towards me, but her steps were very slow and deliberate, and it didn't match the sound that I was hearing. At this point, I stared at her in disbelief. I just didn't know what to do. Should I confront her? Should I call the police? Should I run? But before I could make a decision, I froze and I stood there on the sidewalk as she approached me. I was hoping she would just pass me, but she walked up to me. She looked at me, and she said in a very soft voice,
"Don't be afraid. I just want to talk to you."
She was remarkably calm, but this made me even more afraid. As I tried to back away slowly and prepare myself to run, she grabbed my arm quickly and held me in place. At this point, I froze up again and my heart started beating fast.
"I've been watching you, and I know everything about you. I know what you like. I know what you don't like. I know your fears and your secrets. I've been following you."
At this point, I was absolutely terrified. I don't know how she thought she knew all this about me. She must have been stalking me online, or even watching me through my window. The thoughts were pouring in, and I just needed to get out of there. As she continued to speak, I pushed her arm away, and I ran. She tried to hold me in a tight grip, but I didn't allow that to happen. Before I ran, I felt her breath on my face. It was hot and it gave a very distinct odor. As I started to run and grow distance between us, she only said one thing that I could make out. She said,
"You're mine now."
As I quickly ran, the tears started pouring in and I couldn't help it. I quickly looked behind me, and not even 15 seconds passed and she was gone. she disappeared into the darkness. I ran until I lost my breath. I just couldn't believe what had happened to me. How she thought she knew everything about me. It made me feel like there was a pain rising in my chest, that she might even be right, and I probably couldn't escape her. When I got home, my cell phone started to buzz. It was blowing up with random notifications on social media. I locked my front door, and I opened my accounts to find hundreds of messages from an anonymous user. They were all taunting me, blackmailing me, threatening me, and revealing my deepest secrets for the world to see. I blocked the user, and I went to take a shower to try to wash this away. My phone began to buzz again moments later. This person created a new account and started sending more messages. I felt like I was being suffocated by this person. A few days passed, and these messages still came. I was just too afraid to leave my house, or even be by myself. Too afraid to go see the world again, and I felt like I was a prisoner. I don't know who this person was, or what her motives were, but I feel like she may be ruining my life. I feel like I don't have a sense of security anymore, or a sense of self. And now, as I write this story to share with you, I still feel her presence in the dark corners of my mind. To start, I'm a female in my early 20s. I work as a cashier at a grocery store, and I talk to hundreds of people a week. I should have known something was off when he first came through. About 6 months ago, my job is to be friendly with people, so I treated this man who came in like every other customer. He was obviously pretty down on his luck, and he opened with, "Hey, how's it going?" And he proceeded to tell me a whole sob story, maybe about his wife or his ex-wife, but whoever it was, kicked him out of the house. In his words, she was apparently having a psychotic breakdown. This should have been a red flag. He told me that he was homeless, hungry, and lonely, and I did feel bad for him. And in the short amount of time that we had the interaction, I attempted to sympathize with him. He was trying to buy a big rotisserie chicken, but our government programs in this state don't cover hot food for some reason. So I did some cashier magic and I changed it so his food stamps would cover the chicken, so he'd have a hot meal to eat that night. This was my first mistake. Even though he was extremely grateful, and he left with not a problem at all, this was a very defining moment for him. Every single Monday, he proceeded to come in, only going through my line to buy a hot chicken, the same rotisserie chicken, every single time. I genuinely thought I was doing something nice for someone going through a hard time, but he always ended up trapping me at my register with this conversation. At first, it was to complain about his ex's psychotic behavior, and he called her a narcissistic you-know-what, and crazy. I just listened to it because I had nowhere to go. I was at work after all, so I was stuck behind the register. After a while, he got over it, and he moved into a hostel of some sort. He was somewhat more stable, but obviously still lonely and depressed. He always told me that I cheered him up, and he really enjoyed the time he spent talking with me. I told him that I did as well. Maybe that wasn't the right thing to say, but I really did at the time think that was the right thing to say. He would occasionally ask me, "Can we go somewhere sometime and have a real conversation?" I told him that I wasn't interested and I had a boyfriend, but he still continued to come in to see me, I should mention my coworkers had always thought these interactions he had with me were just way too personal and lengthy. One of my coworkers even called him a creep one day, but I just brushed it off, and I just thought I was being friendly to someone who was down on their luck. But that soon changed. Eventually, the things that my coworkers were saying started to repeat in my head, and it started to make sense. Maybe I just needed to hear somebody else say it to me because I wasn't realizing it. I told my parents about him, and I tried to avoid him as much as possible. I knew for sure he would come in on Mondays, and around the same time, so I would just take a break then. I just didn't want to see him anymore. I didn't want to talk to him, and he was really creeping me out. So last week, it was one of the busiest weeks at the grocery store, the week before Thanksgiving, and I couldn't avoid him, and knowing my luck, I saw him and we locked eyes. He came through my line, and he only bought a bag of chips, obviously trying to talk to me, and he waited in line for 15 minutes instead of going through the express register. When the man finally got to my register, he asked me, "Where have you been? I haven't seen you in forever." I just gave him short answers. I try not to engage too much. Then he says, "You saved my life, you know. You really helped me turn my life around. I just want to repay you." At this point, I felt icky inside. It told me everything I needed to know about this person that I was dealing with. He kept saying that, "I always think about you, especially right when I leave the store, and when I'm home writing music." This was the first time I have ever dealt with somebody like this. Every time I thought about him, the thoughts I had were filled with anxiety. Today was my absolute breaking point, and that's why I'm writing this story now. I just got back from my last break, and I saw him getting off of the bus. At this point, my coworkers know and they support me when I try to avoid him. I ran up the stairs to the break room, and I was obviously panicking. 10 minutes later, one of my coworkers comes in, and he lets me know that the man did 3 laps around the store, looking for me, and then he left without buying a thing. He was clearly looking for me. I told my coworker I was gonna wait 15 more minutes and I'd be back on the floor. So I did that. But when I got back to the floor, I was just filled with anxiety, looking around every corner. I do appreciate my coworkers for having my back by letting me know. So I went back to my register, but I looked down and I didn't notice until I looked back up. The man came back in again, and he ran straight towards my register. My thoughts were racing. I was having a panic attack. One of the other cashiers was very inviting to him and yelled over to him, "Sir, I can help you right here." I basically ran away from my register. Thankfully, my coworker said something to him, so I began to walk towards the break room. I turn around and I realize the man ignored my coworker and he was following me. He didn't say anything, he was just looking straight at me, following me. Then he yells out, "Rebecca, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, please stop." I made it to the break room and I swung the door open. The man did not follow me inside. Thankfully, the store manager was in there, and I told him about what was going on and how the guy came back. The manager was angry and he stormed out to deal with it. The man actually ended up leaving. The management ran outside to try to catch him. but he was gone. I was having a panic attack in the break room, and I was just thinking about putting my 2 weeks in because I couldn't take much more of this. My coworkers were saying this is a scary thing to deal with, and he wouldn't be apologizing if he knew he wasn't doing something wrong. My coworker was 100% right about that. They comforted me as much as possible. They said it wasn't my fault, and I don't need to be sorry. I just can't help but feel so sorry. I should have set boundaries with this man sooner and told him he was making me uncomfortable. My manager said that this behavior was completely inappropriate and unacceptable. Ever since then, he hasn't came back in. But I'm writing this today. I still work there, but I am planning on putting my 2 weeks in because I don't think I can take much more of this.